Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Overdose and Chill. This is episode number 144 of Overdose and Chill, and we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. For those of you who don't know me, I am KJ or Kaustubh Joshi. I am the Chief Data Officer at Overdose. And today we are going to speak about measurements in marketing and how having the right measurements approach can help your advertising dollars go a lot farther. But we are going to specifically speak in the context of Meta. And that's why we have two awesome humans from Meta here. First up, we have Avik Dalal. Avik is the marketing science partner at Meta. So, Avik, do you want to just say hi and tell everyone what you do at Meta?
Oh yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Avik. I work with our retail and marketplace clients in Australia, and I help them find the best bang for buck for their marketing dollars. So I help them measure and devise marketing strategies.
That's music to our advertisers' ears, isn't it? And then we have Shashank Kapur. Shashank is the agency partner at Meta. He works with independent agencies like Overdose. Shashank, if you just wanted to introduce yourself to all our viewers.
Sure. Thanks, KJ. Hi, everyone. My name is Shashank, and as KJ mentioned, I'm an agency partner at Meta. I work with independent agencies in Australia and New Zealand to help them to develop their marketing strategies, business development, help them upskill, and then partner with them and collaborate with them to help our advertisers and customers like yourself achieve better marketing strategies and results.
That's awesome. Thanks for joining, both of you. Before we actually start going into the juicier stuff, I just wanted to remind everyone that measurements is a hot topic and it's going to invoke a lot of questions. So if you have any questions, please use the comments box of whichever platform you're watching us on. And those questions are just going to magically reach us and we'll address them as they come. So let's get kicked off. Shashank, Avik, in the past 2 3 years, our advertisers and e-commerce merchants have seen it all, right? There's been a great digital surge in 2020 and 2021. Then there was like a mass recalibration that happened later, which was associated with declining revenues, ad performances, etc. So obviously COVID and post-COVID have been themes. We are not going to talk about that, but there's been a lot of movement in the privacy and measurement space as well during this time, and that has influenced a lot of what we are seeing. So from your perspective, would you give us a summary of what you see is happening in the industry and how it affects the ads landscape?
Yep. Yeah, sure. I can start, and probably Shashank, you can jump in afterwards. So if we look at the changes, right? People are demanding more privacy, and the ecosystem is rapidly evolving to meet those expectations. Now, if you look at the changes that's happening, they're kind of in three buckets. One is how data is managed, second is how data is surfaced, and third is how it is sourced. So I can probably talk about how data is managed, and then Shashank can take the other two parts. So in terms of how data is managed, regulators, so all the technology companies are working with regulators, and the focus is to find new ways to improve the privacy and make sure we preserve privacy, give people more control and more transparency, right? Now, if you look at the regulations we have in place now, for example, Europe has GDPR, US has CCPA, California Consumer Privacy Act. So what regulations like this, what they're doing is it means that businesses, they will have to review, and in some cases, where needed, they have to update their transparency and control they provide to people on how their data is collected, stored, and shared. Right. So that's the biggest change. Like, it is changing how we are thinking about using data, and what kind of transparency and control we are giving to consumers or people. Shashank, do you want to talk about how it is surfaced and how data is sourced?
Sure. So, with what's actually happening in the industry, we're seeing that the way data is being sourced or surfaced has shifted. Typically, in fact, even today, but we've got a short runway here. But the way data is being surfaced is through cookies and browsers, right? So typically, what happens is when you visit a website, a little file gets dropped as a cookie from the browser that records all your information in encrypted file. We know that this is now changing. This is changing because browsers are getting more and more control, are offering more control to consumers, to users of the product. And then we're also seeing, going back to cookies, we're also seeing a change in that. Like for those who are unaware, Google has announced that they're going to deprecate cookies. So the way we get information, the way we retain information, the way it helps us market better, all of that is going to change very soon. And this is happening in 2024, as per the last that we've heard in the industry. So this is where I would say our conversion API, it's a server-side integration or implementation that happens. So essentially, we have a tracking aspect called the pixel, and pixel basically records all your events, your conversions. And now when you add another layer of protection for yourself, or what we call signals, the server-side integration would start getting all that information from your website directly in terms of what users are doing and feed that back in an anonymized, aggregated manner to the platform. So that's happening. That's what cookie deprecation is going to do, and that's what a solution like Conversion API would essentially come into the measurement picture. And in terms of how data is being sourced, like this is now most of us would have heard this. There's an over reliance on first party, not over reliance, there's now a stronger reliance or the need for first party data. So what you're seeing more and more is every business now wants to know who their customers are. No longer as anonymized strings or sessions or events as they used to be tracked conventionally. Now we want to know about their name, their email address, their phone numbers. So there will be there's already been that shift where you will see that every business wants to ask you to subscribe to the newsletter, wants you to tell them if they can wants to know if they can contact you back, fill in a
Yeah.
lead form. So that is also changing as part of the shift in industry.
Yeah.
So uh, yeah, we're building a lot as Meta. We're investing a lot in that side of the business, on the stack of the business. I would go say that we're almost like rebuilding it because there's so many changes, and we're building our own products and solutions to overcome these challenges.
That's awesome. Thanks for that. So you mentioned two things: conversions API, which is something that we're going to come to very soon, but even the first party data. And I just wanted to drop some 2 cents here. You know, there's been a lot of chat about the importance of first party data, and generally, the moment people say first party data, people think that it's something very complex. But you gave a very simple example, right? It can be as simple as asking a user to subscribe to a newsletter. The moment you get their email address, as long as it's consented, you have first party data right at that point. And now, if you can start using this data in your tracking to Facebook or any marketing platform for that matter, Facebook automatically does not have to relate, as in Meta in general, not just on the Facebook surface, but in general, Meta does not have to rely on things like third-party cookies anymore. And because you have specified who this user is, deterministically. So what we're going to be talking about might sound like complex terms, conversions, API, and first party data and whatnot. But at its very simplistic level, it's the foundation of it is simple that, hey, try and find out who this user is and tell the advertising platform or help the advertising platform identify that user so that they can market to those people better without the reliance on those sneaky third party cookies that are anyways out. So thanks for that.
KJ, I might just jump in and say add to yours. Like we've also seen some changes in the platforms like mobile devices, right? Like most often when we download apps from iOS, Apple Play Store, we get that message: ask app to track, always track, and not to track, right? So
Yeah.
that's also a way of taking back in or probably alienating information back to your campaigns or
Yeah.
your business. And that's also a predominant challenge that I actually forgot to mention, but is very prevalent in today, and why we're taking a hit.
Awesome. So you did mention conversions API. Would you mind breaking it down for our viewers and just kind of talk about the premise of that and how it helps?
Yep, I can take that. So before we jump into conversions API, I think let's talk about events, right? Let's talk about what we mean by events. Let's say you are buying something. You're on an e-com website. You are buying something, or you want to buy something. You click on a product. That's one event, which is we will call it view content, right?
Yeah.
Then you add the product to the cart, add to cart. So those each of the step that you take to your in your path to conversion in your conversion journey, those are events. Now, coming to your question, KJ, what conversions API is, it's essentially the events that we just discussed. It's what it's trying to do is giving us a server-to-server connection for advertiser to send those events directly to us, to Meta, instead of relying on someone's browser, for example.
Yeah.
From if you're an advertiser, you're a merchant, from your server directly, those events, those add to cart, those view content, those purchase events, they will just go directly to us, and that's all it's doing. So Pixel does the same thing, but
Yeah.
the way it does it is different. It uses your Pixel fires on your browser. Conversions API is essentially, instead of using your browser, it's using a server. So I know we use jargons that are sometimes like they don't sound very nice, but it's essentially a very simple thing, right?
Yeah.
It's the plumbing between on how the data is shared that's changing, nothing else. Now, coming to your point on how this helps, right? So what happens when you have that server to server connection where you can send those event types, you can optimize for these events. So for example, I am running a campaign and I want to make sure I get as many add to cart as possible, or as many purchases as possible, as often the case is. So you can optimize for those purchase events or view content events or add to cart events using the events that you're getting from Capi or Conversions API. That's
Yeah.
that's that's your optimization. And then the other side of it, you can track or measure those events that are happening. So whenever we're talking about this kind of solutions, it's usually two parts to it. One is performance or optimization, and other is measurement. Capi helps you in both. It helps you optimize for the events that you care about, and it helps you measure the events that you care about. So that's essentially Capi is. It's a server-to-server connection to send your events securely to Meta.
Awesome. So, as an agency, we kind of have this conversation several times. The same kind of question comes in different flavors from different
Yep.
merchants. For us, it's e-commerce merchants whom we deal with, and they are obviously advertisers on multiple platforms, including Meta. And their question is always this, which is, we are already having a pixel. Why?
Mhm.
Like, how different is this conversions API event going to be? And like, I think the most common answer that I feel we can convince e-commerce merchants is just telling them that number one is that privacy is here to stay and it's only going to get more stringent, right?
Yep.
And um, more privacy is good because it gives out like fairer solutions for users. But more privacy at its basics, let's just accept it. It means less data, and less data for advertising platforms and advertisers means that you're not going to be able to build the same level of rich audiences. You're not going to be able to build the same reach the same kind of people. And I'm not talking about Meta in specific. It's all marketing platforms, right? And which means your performances are going to go down. Till now, advertisers used to rely on the default pixel setup and just imagine that it's going to work well. But now that time is gone. Merchants need to start becoming smarter on how they can use that first party data that they're collecting to help the advertising platform. And if they can provide that in each of the events that you mentioned, Avik, it's like a gold mine where now you don't have to rely on third party cookies or all the hundreds of other signals that you use to identify who this person is to enrich their profile. You know exactly who it is because the merchant or the advertiser has told you who it is, and it's with prior consent. So it just becomes a much fairer way to deal with things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And kind of going back to one of the examples that you used earlier about reaching audience who have consented to their email IDs, for example.
Yeah.
Let's say you have a a custom audience based on people who have added things to cart but probably didn't make a purchase. Do you want to then retarget them with some offers, or like just retarget them and say, hey, do you want to just give them a nudge to
Yeah.
move them along the journey a little bit if they're very close to purchase? So yes, absolutely, completely agree. And it is privacy is of course giving us more transparency and control over our data, but we still have opportunities on using it. And kind of going back to your question around that question that you get around, if I already have a pixel, why do I care about conversions API? Like we have browser ad blockers. Like there are a lot of people who have browser ad blockers and all that. Like that will stop your pixel fires. But the moment
Yeah.
you have a server to server connection, you are immune to that and you don't have to worry about that anymore. So the data you have access to is much more richer, and rich data means better targeting and better measurement.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a very important point that you've added, which is apart from all the things that we just mentioned, browsers
Yeah,
themselves are becoming, more. They're going more in the direction of, oh, we want to give the users every bit of privacy option there.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, what options do advertisers have to actually get to Conversions API? What does it mean to get implemented with Conversions API?
Yep. So in terms of the technical implementation itself, there are three pathways the advertisers have. First is a direct integration. So if you're an advertiser or an agency who have access to dev resources, who can go to they could access our server's code base and essentially create an integration that is customized for you. But yeah, as I said, it does require dev resources, right? So that's option one. Option two is a partner-based integration. So I think we have over 50 partners who can help you do that integration. And then the third, and arguably, we probably shouldn't choose our favorites, but arguably most easiest one to implement is CAPI Gateway. CAPI Gateway, Shashank, do you want to talk about CAPI Gateway?
Yeah, I'd love to, because there's a bit of nugget here that I think our audience should be aware of. So, Gateway is a self-service configuration option that advertisers can choose. One of the best things about this is you don't need to know any coding. So, as Avik was saying earlier, there are three methods. So he spoke about, literally, I would say, two extremes. One is plug and play with a partner integration, which is if you're using much like a platform like WooCommerce or Shopify, it's
Yeah,
really very, very simple.
few
Uh,
clicks.
2 clicks, 20 seconds to 30 seconds, depending on how fast your browser refreshes and confirms your changes. Um, and then the last one, which is giving you the most control and leads a lot of resources in terms of time, human cost, that's direct. Now, in between that is something, as Avik was insinuating, called Gateway. And as I was building, like, you don't need coding. It's a server side integration, and it just uses or probably leverages a cloud based platform. So you would essentially need to connect your account to an Amazon Web Services, and more up. And until most recently, now you can also connect it to a Google Cloud platform. So we've got that flexibility where all you have to do is get your information. I mean, you enable that service, you connect your account to either of the two platforms, and then it gives you very simple instructions in terms of what you need to do
Yeah,
to get enabled, and basically be resilient. So you might hear us say a few words like signals and resilient. Signals are basically information that we've all been talking about the last 15 minutes, which is the information that is required, like your name, address, anything that will help us understand who you are.
yeah,
Again, let me say, in a privacy safe manner.
yeah,
It's not like giving back complete information, it's always hashed out. So let me be absolutely transparent on that. So
yeah,
when you do this, it like Avik was saying, we remove that blocker of the browser limitations and capabilities and help you with information that um, serves better, I would say, data and as well as marketing strategies for you. Now, where I think this is of interest is Overdose and Meta have recently worked on a technical project, And Overdose Digital today is an agency that has enabled CAPI gateway for multiple accounts.
Yeah.
What that typically means for an advertiser like or a customer like yourselves are, say you don't have a partner integration doesn't work, you have to do a direct or a gateway. Typically, with what Overdose has set up, now you can link your respective accounts with them. You can work with them into understanding what that looks like. And KJ, I'll just ask you to jump in, chime in whenever you
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
But essentially, you work with the digital team here. They will be able to walk you through the steps in terms of how to be resilient. And within a few clicks, a matter of minutes, because they've done the hard yard, they can now enable you to become more resilient and surface better information and also help you getting better results on your ROI and campaigns. Because the system's using those information or signals, as I was saying, to further optimize and keep the more data that's flowing through will help it to optimize and deliver more efficient results. KJ, do you want to talk about the gateway implementation?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were presented with an opportunity to partner with Meta on setting up a CAPI gateway for merchants who don't really want to manage the AWS server or the cloud server, Google Cloud server that Shashank was talking about. And so what we've done is we've leveraged their solution, which is the CAPI gateway for multiple accounts. Which basically, if you want CAPI set up and if you're struggling with it based on the existing integrations, just reach out to us and we can get you set up in a very fast, efficient, and solid manner where like Shashank said, I wouldn't say it's a couple of minutes, sorry. But yeah, it's pretty fast and it's pretty efficient, and it's also on some really reliable services, of course Amazon web services and Google Cloud. There's absolutely no questions on the reliability of your marketing data passing through that. So we've got a question here from Ella. Hey team, between those different CAPI integration methods possible, is there any study to show if taking one approach yields better results than the other? That's a very good question.
Yeah, I don't think we have done any studies on this, but I do not expect to see results to change, because in terms of like how it works, it's still the same. It's just like instead of like, are you writing a code, or if someone else writing a code for you, or they're using a package to connect it. So I don't expect to see any differences if we had to test it, but I don't
Yeah,
think we have done any tests on it.
absolutely. Thanks for that. Hey, on that note, since there was one question, I just wanted to remind everyone that you can ask questions in the comments box of the platform that you're watching us on, and those questions will make it to us. Because sometimes people just wonder, how do I ask a question? Or I'm viewing on LinkedIn, and will that question reach us? Yes, it does. So we've talked about all the methods of integration. I wanted to ask you, like even a pixel setup, you can set up a pixel and you can set up a pixel well, because Facebook or Meta offers a lot of additional parameter options that you can actually send to get better results from what you track. So in terms of conversions API, what would you say are the other things that actually make your scores better or make your efforts much more worthwhile?
Yep. Um, so I think you answered it yourself, like more parameters. So essentially, like the richer the data set that we have, the better we target and optimize and measure. So for example, we talked about hashed PIIs, for example. So one part is knowing who this user is. Now, if you have consent from the user to store hashed personally identifiable information like emails, that does help. So we use we use a term called event match quality. So it's essentially how well we can match an event to an user. So that quality increases with information like hashed PII. And coming to studies, I'm just looking at the number. Yes, 13.8%. So when we looked at Pixel without those PII information, without
Yeah.
PII and Pixel with PII, we see about a 13.8% decrease in cost per action or cost per purchase if you're optimizing for purchase. So very significant improvement in performance. If your cost is going down by about 14%, that's substantial. The other one is, in the example that we were discussing about multiple events, like add to cart, purchase, view content, and so on. Instead of just sending information about purchase, if you, let's say, you are only you only care about purchase, you don't care about how many people have seen that product or how many people have added it to cart. But even then, send those events in, because based on those events, we can optimize better for purchase. So what I'm trying to get to is send more events information, not
Yeah.
just the one or two that you care about. Sending
Yeah.
more information often results in improvement in performance. We have case studies that shows multiple conversion events, like those add to cart and stuff, add to cart and view content. It can reduce your cost per action up to 21%, which is,
Oh,
again,
wow.
significant reduction. So essentially, the richer the data set is, the better it is. Try to send as many hashed PIIs you can get to, and as many, like, make sure your events coverage is quite high as well.
Amazing. Yeah, that's awesome because apart from just implementing conversions API, I know of some examples where we've been asked, hey, just set up the purchase event because that's the
Yep.
only one that matters. Why do we need everything else? We're not going to optimize towards that. But that just proves it, that the more signals you get around intent, even though you're not optimizing for that,
Exactly.
it's going
Yep.
to help.
Yep.
So that's amazing. So Shashank, I would direct this question to you. We've been talking about conversions API, and it's not a new concept, right? It came in 2020 that you started bringing it to the forefront after Apple iOS 14, and we've been talking to a lot of merchants since then. But we still do get apprehensions around, is it worth the investment? What
Hmm.
would you say in, like, how, if you had a way to convince them, how would you convince them that it is the only and right way to go?
That's a great question, and it's a question we hear quite often. To be honest, not just from agencies, but basically from customers too. It goes back to I guess the very first question, KJ, that you asked about the changes in the industry and the impact that it'll have on not just Meta as an ad platform. It's going to have an impact on almost every platform you work with, because it's all about now, with all that's happening, it's all about giving privacy, control, transparency, right? So when all of these factors are changing, it basically goes back to that, the apprehension when you talk about it is about how much information do you have and how well can you optimize on this. One of the things that I personally look at is, look, the platform is delivering with all the changes. Now with further restrictions and constraints that's being put not by a particular browser or company but industry, it's going to add, it's going to change the level, it's going to change the field, right? Like the level playing field.
Yeah.
Typically what we see is, with the cookie deprecation, or with even with the browser privacy and the tracking issues, ask app not to track, all those kind of situations, it's giving the platform less and less information to basically optimize and basically say with confidence that yes,
Yeah.
these are the behaviors exhibited by type A that would result in, say, cost per action of X amount. And then it'll form another hypothesis where a type B audience would deliver 20% more results at 30% cheaper cost, right? Now, the only way you can make that is when there are more signals and information flowing through.
Mm.
So, with this context, let me now answer about, how would you talk to, or how would you address this apprehension? Look, I think the like I said, the runway for cookie deprecation is nearing, right? So to ensure you're well protected as a customer, you're able to see that information and the platform can deliver for you. It's a
Yeah.
small amount of time investment that you need to make and meet with the platform to safeguard yourself,
Yeah.
because there are users on the platform, there are users who are actively engaging on the platform. The amount of inventory or the products that we had 5 years ago versus today is just mind blowing, right?
Yeah.
So there's the richness of data, as Avik was also talking about. So there's richness of data, there's people on the platform, there are people who are engaging on the platform, which means there's intent to not only stick but to do things. And if at that point, if fundamentally our house is weak, and that's me as a customer, if
Yeah.
my measurement signals are weak, if I am not putting guardrails to protect myself, it's going to have an impact on me. Like,
Yeah.
typically, the more signals, the more resilience that we have, we see better impact or outcomes in terms of cost per action, which means better profitability for you in these challenging times, with what's happening in the market since the beginning of 2023.
Yeah.
And we there are some analysis done essentially, but if you choose to not also make these changes before the timeline, now it's important to not wait until the very last day when cookie deprecates and then you're running helter
Right.
skelter. You need to give yourself some runway time way to, make sure you've made a change, you're able to absorb the information coming through.
Yeah.
Some campaigns will start powering you with more information. So, are you ready with that information to then take it to the next level? Can you go granular? Can you go broader? Can you go expansive? Can you go specific? Can you become more creative and personal? So, all of those questions need to be addressed. And doing that at the last minute, that scurry, is something I would ask you to avoid or recommend you to avoid. And just closing the loop on this aspect is, when you do it last minute, or if you fail to do it at the last minute, there's a very strong chance that whatever you've done today and 6 months later or 6 months before, even if you don't touch things, you'll start seeing costs go up because there will be just lack of signals coming through,
Yeah.
which will make it difficult for your business to attain the same results as you did 2 days ago after before the deprecation.
Yeah.
So, summarizing it in the last 30 seconds, typically more signals yield better cost per action or results for you as a business, which would typically mean better profitability and outcomes to help you become more efficient.
Yeah. That's awesome. And also we have another question. Um, I think this goes back to the methods of integration, and given the fact that conversions API is almost becoming a hygiene factor, the question is, merchants on e-commerce platforms such as Shopify, which you mentioned, Shashank, have a much easier and effective path to having conversions API with native integrations. Is Facebook working with other e-commerce platforms such as Commerce Tools, Adobe, Salesforce to have such a tight integration?
Avik, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'll have to check the details, but I think some of the three that's mentioned here, at least a couple of them should have similar kind of integration like Shopify. But yeah, like I'll have to check, but it's worth checking whether they're already on because they might be.
Awesome. And I guess there must be definitely there must be an integrations team who would anyways be hard at work in trying to increase their coverage and make things easier for advertisers and merchants. Sam says, loving the explanation here, team. Thank you. With the upcoming accepted cookie deprecation, is it possible that having conversions API becomes mandatory for advertising on Meta? And probably not now, but maybe in future. Is that something that could happen?
I think mandatory is an absolute word, and I don't see that happening. But to Shashank's point, if you don't have those data infrastructures in place, your cost will go up, and like
Yeah.
potentially will go up, and you
Yeah.
might want to like safeguard yourself from that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it'll be mandatory in the sense that like we enforce it and we have to have it. I don't see that
Yeah.
happening. Hard to tell, but I don't see that happening as
Makes
such.
sense. And I think just putting the previous couple of answers that you guys had talked about. Um, so you mentioned that even today, when cookies are not completely deprecated, you mentioned the average. Of course, there'll be higher and lower. The average uplift that you see is 14%. As of today, when cookies are still existent, and there's already a considerable enough difference for people to say that, hey, you know what, 14% monthly, if I can get 14% more transactions for the same amount of money, my the investment that I've done in terms of time and money to implement this is is probably going to come back to me within a few days. So it right now is 14%. Imagine when cookies are no longer a thing, third party cookies are no longer a thing, that difference is going to be much, much, much larger. And yeah, even if it doesn't become mandatory, do advertisers want to be in that space where they are actually missing out on so much efficiency? It almost becomes an obvious answer that we need it.
Quickly, before we jump to the next question, going back to the previous questions around business partners, just confirming that Salesforce is actually a business partner like Shopify. So if you're with Salesforce, you can use Salesforce to get that integration done.
Lovely. Thanks for checking that, Avik. All good. So we've talked about conversions API and tracking well. Another question that we commonly get is, hey, we advertise so much and Google Analytics says one thing, Facebook says one thing, and obviously everyone understands the reason why they are different, and it's totally valid. But if the question is, how do we put together a measurement and reporting approach to actually understand the true impact of our advertising efforts? How would you say should be the right way of looking at that?
I wish there was one right way to look at that, then my job would be quite easy, but
Yeah,
there isn't, right? As you said, Google Analytics, or like let's talk about Google attribution models, right? Attribution models are necessary, right? You make day-to-day decisions based on attribution models. So totally understand why people use attribution models, but I think we right now we kind of all understand there are flaws how the attribution models work, and they're probably not as accurate as some of the other measurement solutions. So kind of to answer your question, it's never one solution. The one thing that we talk about a lot, we call it measurement 360, is essentially a bunch of measurement solutions working in unity, and probably just like using information from all of that to kind of triangulate to the source of truth. So what I
yeah,
mean by that, let's say you have an attribution model, right? Let's say you have MMM. So we have our own open source MMM package, so marketing mix model, media mix model package, where you can do an MMM model. There are of course third party providers doing MMM models as well. So let's say you have an attribution model and MMM, and you run lift studies. Lift studies are incrementality studies, right? So what it's trying to do is it's trying to figure out, if I hadn't run this campaign or run this ad, would people have still made a purchase? And given that I had run this ad, was the incremental, how many additional purchases did I drive? Not the total purchases. How many
yeah,
additional purchases did I drive because of the campaign? So our recommendation always is to kind of work with these three kind of solutions, right? MMM, lift, attribution, work with them together. Any modeling that you use, be it attribution or MMM, try to calibrate that with lift. Essentially use lift, be it on any platform, use lift tests as your source of truth, calibrate those results, use it with your modeling. That's one. And the second one is, of course, kind of going back to the basics, right? Like just make sure every action you're taking is tested, is experimented. So that's really, really important. Start with your business goals, align your KPIs with that, and make sure you are testing continuously. Continuous test and learn approaches are often the best way to go about it. It is iterative. I mean, I know, like, you answered for me, you asked me for a solution, and it's not. It's just a bunch of solution, but
yeah,
that's really the best way to go about it. There is no silver bullet that you do just want this one thing that will help. It's not that. It's a
yeah,
bunch of solutions, and kind of tying it back to CAPI, right? CAPI is not a measurement solution. CAPI is an enabler for better measurement and better performance. So think
yeah.
about the enablers as well. Like it's not just CAPI. Any way you can get more information and more data about who your customers are, what they're doing, their behaviors. Try to think about using that in the most effective way that helps you. So
I think a lot of listeners right now are feeling at comfort that they are not the only ones who are struggling to find one solution. And when it comes from Meta directly, that the industry does not have one solution. You have to use multiple things to understand what's happening and make your interpretation. That is gold. And I'm sure a lot of e-commerce merchants and advertisers that we work with are quite at calm right now after hearing that. Um, so you mentioned a very important thing, which is lift and experiments. How easy or difficult is it for advertisers to do that?
It is very easy to run a lift study, right? The way lifts work, lifts are randomized control trials. I know, like, I'm just explaining one word with another word right now, but bear with me. So what we do, we start with, let's say we start with a group of 100 people. We randomly select 20 people and put them what we call in a control group. So the rest 80 is in a test group. The test group sees the ad that you're running. The control group doesn't see the ad, right? Then we look at sales from the test group and we look at sales from the control group and we look at the difference in sales in those two.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Now, this is the incrementality study, and it is very easy to run now with self-serve CLSs that we have. So if you want to run a lift study on Meta, on be it on your whole account or some specific campaigns that you want to check on how much incremental conversion that you're getting, you can run it through a self-serve CLS study, and it is, of course, like there is no additional cost to it. You can just go on to your business manager, or I think it's go to your ads manager and set it up as a self-serve CLS
Amazing.
It's on the
That is
experiments tab.
in the experiments tab. Thanks.
lovely. Now, I think that sounds like an exciting thing to do, because the moment the word incrementality comes with a figure associated with it, people feel at comfort that, oh yeah, if I spent $1,000 on that day on Meta ads, like I can see that there was this amount of incrementality, and here's the data behind it. That's amazing. So this obviously sounds like something which has been there, but probably the self-serve is somewhat new. What else is on the roadmap that you could, obviously, if you could share it publicly? What else do you have on the roadmap for advertisers?
Yep. Okay. So I will talk about one thing. So, and the reason I would mention it is because it's kind of tied to the discussions that we have on privacy change as well. So, as a business, we are investing quite heavily, and with other publishers and other businesses as well. So we are investing quite heavily on privacy enhancing techniques. So essentially, how we can make sure, like how we can improve privacy landscape, right? So privacy enhancing techniques will include things like multi-party computing, on-device learnings, and etc. Right? So this is where the industry is shifting, and probably in a few years' time, we will have more privacy enhanced techniques in place, and that's what's coming. No, I'm not saying that, again, I'm not saying Conversions API will be mandatory for that, but Conversions API would be a building block for those kind of privacy enhancing techniques. So it's not just cookie deprecation. It probably like make sure that you are prepared for long-term future changes on privacies as well. So that's kind of where we're shifting as an industry. We are working with quite a few publishers on this privacy enhancing techniques. It's not like Meta is doing that. Meta is working with a group of publishers
Yeah.
along with the other big players. We are all working on that. So yes, privacy enhancing techniques, and as with anything, Conversions API is very likely to be a building block for that as well.
So it sounds like we are at the beginning of some really big dramatic changes, and it's just the start. And it feels like, oh, we've already come like a long distance from what it used to be, but actually it's just the start. Shashank, you were going to say something? Sorry, I.
I was no, all good. I was actually gonna just go back to your previous question or the statement on conversion lift. What I wanted to actually add was, I think with everything that's changing, like the path to purchase is not linear. The number of options you had back in the days for purchasing were very simple. I mean, if you think about the choices you had to make to buy a car, were very simple. The choices you had to make to buy anything utility based, right? It was very simple. Now you have so many options, which means the path to purchase is complex, and essentially, when you have an e-store, e-commerce store, you don't have the full visibility of what's really happening or why someone comes to your web page, browses 100 catalogs, adds maybe 3 4 items after spending like 30 minutes, and then you see that right at the payment page they drop out, right? And
Yeah.
that's very frustrating. And you don't know why, right? So like this is very typical frustrating behavior. So I've had a passion project e-commerce store that we've run in the past, and it's frustrated me. So I completely empathize with you. And what that made me do was like, and this is where the CLS or incrementality ties down is like you always have to, firstly, you don't have to always assume that what works for one will work for the others. And you always have to have that open concept or mind or to test things, be okay to test things, test in small capacity, but test regularly. That's my advice. So conversion lift study now when it's become self-serve, like we said, it's there in the experimentation tab. Um, it helps you to understand what changes you're making. It could be simple, like this is more of an A/B test, but you can show somebody green, and then somebody on your ads could be shown blue or orange, and then you can see what the difference is. But essentially, have that mind to. I would encourage you to go down that path where you're always testing something, you're challenging yourself and the platform and not assuming, and seeing if things work. And that's where incrementality can help you, like understand the small changes you're making to the account, to your campaign, to your business,
Yeah.
or whatever products you're introducing that has that. So I just want to plug that gap on the importance of running these tests and why it's now also there on the platform for you to use. So it's a great tool. Please leverage it to the best of your capability. And I would say to test every like 3 to 6 months. Like don't let it be stagnant. Push yourself to take that decision.
Golden words have been spoken. Oh, there we have one more comment. Great session. How important is event match quality, and what are some common fixes for advertisers with low event match quality?
I'll take it up first, and then Avik, please chime in. So event match quality is extremely important, as Avik is saying. We used to always fundamentally, conventionally think of just purchase as the only action that matters, right? And we would not disregard, we would just give other pathways to conversion less importance.
Yeah.
Um, so with this context being set, what Avik had mentioned, like look at a signal before, which is add to carts or payment failures. Like look at those signals and see how much information is being recorded, how many people you're getting in there. And effectively, now coming back to your event match quality. So typically, you can see the score for your events. As we explained, events are those actions people are taking on your website, specific actions, and those actions matter to you. We internally, not sorry, we at Meta give you that score on your. If you go to your ad account, you go to events, you'll be able to see what events are being tracked, how much information is being passed through them, and what is the strength of that. Like how good is it to make preemptive decisions or decisions for your account.
Yeah.
So you have good fair. Typically, if a score is 5 and above, like that's considered good, but don't stop at 5. You'd want to get as much information possible, then that can shape the future of your campaigns. It could be better personalized remarketing targeting campaigns or better creative that are giving out personalized creative. So to wind up, event match qualities are there in your ad account, in your uh, ads manager events page. Look at the little score that is associated. There's a little interstitial bubble that'll pop out when you hover around these scores, and it'll also tell you how you can fix that and improve that. So if you're at 5 and below, talk to your team at Overdose, see how you can make that go up. And if it's 5 and above, if it's like 6 or 5, again, don't stop there. Make sure you get to 8 or 9 so that the system can therefore optimize even more efficiently. Anything you want to add, Avik?
No, I think you covered it all. So yeah, it's a score from 0 to 10. 5 or above is usually good. No matter, like, you can go to your events manager and check your event match quality yourself, and so it will always give you opportunities to improvement. So, and you can, as to Sushant's point, you can just go and check what are the steps that you need to take to get a even better EMQ.
Thanks for that, Shashank and Avik. Um, I guess there are probably no more questions that I know of, and we've addressed all that came through. But to be honest, I genuinely enjoyed this chat because it's great chatting with people like-minded from the same industry, kind of aligned in what needs to be done. And I hope our listeners, all the advertisers and merchants that are out there, they found this informative and also enjoyable. But on that note, I guess we can call that a wrap. Thanks, Shashank and Avik, and hope
Cool.
you have a great weekend.
Thanks for
Thanks.
having us. Have a good
Thanks
weekend.
for having us.